Before we start this job, I just want to mention that you want to have your AC system evacuated by a professional. You want to go to a shop, get that done. Do not open or touch anything on the AC system until that is done. You want to make sure that all the refrigerant has been properly removed. Once that's done, you can get started on your repair. I want to start by removing all the bolts that go around the bottom of the bumper and hold it to the splash shield. So there's 7mm bolts that go all around. Remove them all. Once those are out, you have 2 push clips, one on each corner. The center out first. These are probably going to be kind of stuck in here just because of all the sand buildup. Sometimes if you spray them with rust penetrant, it might help, but most of the time you kind of just have to work at it. There's one. Now on each side there will be 3 fasteners to be removed. I'm going to start with these 7mm bolts that hold the bumper to the fender liner. And then right in this gap here where the bumper meets the fender, there's another 7mm bolt hiding. Go ahead and take that out. At this point, your bumper should be ready to come off the sides. That's perfect. We'll leave it here for now. Do the same to the other side, and let's move up top. Now up top, we have the grill here, which is attached to the upper radiator support. And I'm honestly not sure if this is supposed to pop out this easily. So I'm just gonna assume that it's not supposed to. And we're gonna take this off, and either way, it might just be easier to remove it. It's held on by a few push clips and 2 10mm bolts. So let's get all of those out. There's a push clip in the middle here. Now, take it off of the upper radiator support. Typically, I'm going to assume that this is supposed to stay with the bumper. Mine doesn't, so I'm just going to pull it out of the way. At this point, you can grab your bumper cover, pull it out, just like this. Make sure it doesn't fall on the ground. Do the same to the other side, and pull your bumper cover right off. My next step is to take these 2 rubber pieces out. They're held on by a couple push clips. There's one at the top on each. Take that out. And then follow it down. You'll see another push clip at the bottom here. Remove this as well. Then if you just take this piece, lift it up, it'll unlodge itself. Then you can pull it back down and remove it from the area. Do this to both sides. Next are these cross braces here. Let's unbolt those to make things easier. 4 10mm bolts up top, 2 on each. This will also unbolt the latch. Set this aside. And 1 bolt on each side. On the passenger side, it's actually easier to remove this shield once you've taken this bracing out. On the passenger side, at the top of the AC condenser, you'll see this line connected with a 13mm bolt, or nut I should say, to the AC condenser. Go ahead and remove this. Looks like for me the whole stud is spinning. That's fine. I can fix that later. Keep in mind, you'll hear a hissing noise when you take this out. It's not pressure, it's actually vacuum. An AC machine, when it removes the refrigerant, puts a vacuum on the system. There we go. Let's do the same to the bottom nut. In my case, both studs came out. That's fine. Remove the lines. Okay, that's as far as this will go. And then on the driver's side, there are these 2 lines that go in. So pop off the caps. And then we'll have to take these 2 little snap rings out. Usually you can do that with a pick. You can get a little pick in here and pull this down, grab it, and remove it Make sure it doesn't go flying. The AC condenser is held on with two 10mm bolts at the bottom. Remove both. Right by the radiator fans, you'll see this 13mm nut that holds this AC line to the other AC line that leads to the radiator. So let's unbolt this and remove the line. Push that to the side, and I want to disconnect this bracket right here with a 10mm socket. Okay, there are two 10mm bolts up here. Remove both. Those are going to let go of the bracket that holds the upper radiator hose in place. Move that out of the way. There are two T25 Torx bolts that hold the upper radiator support brackets onto this upper radiator support. Go ahead and remove both of those. So now you'll see a little tab here. Press that down and in. That's going to unlock the radiator support at the top, and you can pull the radiator back. Do the same to both sides. And by doing that, you can now remove this line, which is just a little elbow. Now right over here, follow the wiring that leads to the fans and just take it off of the fan shroud. And go ahead and unplug the fans. The locking tab is actually underneath here. I'll show you once it comes out, but you'll need a pocket screwdriver to lift the tab down, I guess, or push it down while you're pulling the connector out. There we go. So this is the tab. I was pulling it down with a screwdriver through this little access hole. Pull that out. Do that to both fans. Let's remove this air intake duct. It's got a push clip on this side. Okay. Now you can lift this up, press down and twist at the same time. That should unlock it. It's got two little tabs that need to pop out. I'll show you in a second. There we go. Once those two are out, you can remove this intake duct. You have to twist it and pull on it until it pops right out. Let's remove the retainer for this connector. All right, back to these lines over here. I'm going to grab them from the other side, and with a collection bucket underneath, I'm just going to go ahead and twist them and pull on them until they pop out. Fluid will come out if your car ran recently. Mine hasn't been running in a while, so I should be good. There we go. Now we can push the top of the radiator and AC condenser backwards. This will give us enough space to pull the AC condenser up and out of these brackets on the side. There we go. And there is your AC condenser. Before the AC condenser can go in, I chose to separate the studs and the nuts that were securing these lines in place with an E7 socket. That's an inverted Torx. And now I'm just going to screw them into the new condenser just slightly. You don't need to go very tight with these, and make sure you put both back in. All right, just snug them up. Take your AC condenser, slide it down, just line it up with the clips here that it mounts on. We'll have to push the radiator back in order to be able to lift the AC condenser up and over the brackets. I'm going to put it in on the passenger side first. Okay, that's in. And now for the driver's side, to push this back, get this up and over, push it down. All right, so this is locked into the tabs. Now I want to put the two bolts in that completely secure it in. Okay, snug these up. Let's get this AC line back in. right, just make sure this is nice and snug. Now let's reconnect this AC line. Make sure you push the O-ring all the way in and resecure it with this nut. Make sure it's nice and snug. That's nice and tight. Then push the lower radiator hose onto the radiator all the way. Make sure it's bottomed out. All right, that's bottomed out. Put the clamp on. Okay, try to sit it back kind of where it was. The hose is formed around the clamp at this point, so it'll seal up best that way. Before we put the upper radiator hose in, I want to tilt the radiator back and put on these top mounts here. They have to go this way with the little tab facing forward. So I'll pull this back to make sure it clears the wiring harness. Put this on, slide it back in, and of course we'll do the same to the other side. And once that's done, let's put the radiator hose back on. I'm going to be using my hose clamp pliers, but of course you can use regular pliers. Make sure the hose is on all the way and it's bottomed out. And this one is. Position the clamp where you want it. Right here is good. Release it. Perfect. While we're here, let's secure the upper radiator hose with these two bolts. Snug these up. Let's connect the main electrical connector here. Bring this over to lock it in and resecure it to the fan shroud. Just like that. And then there was this connector for the fans. Make sure you connect that in. And make sure it clicks so it's secure. And you can bring this harness down and reconnect your fan. Make sure they click into place. And resecure the harness wherever it needs to be secured. Slide this line onto where it connects, and let's put the mounting nut back on. When you tighten this, of course, make sure it goes in nice and even, and you want to make sure that it's nice and tight. Now let's do the same to this bottom one. Over by the transmission lines, go ahead and remove these yellow caps and then take the line, slide it in. It should already have a little C-clip on it. There we go, this one's snapped into place. Let's put the top one in. Okay, this one's snapped into place too. Bring over the two covers. That's what's going to secure the C-clip in place to make sure that the lines don't come out. There you go. Just using some pliers to apply even pressure. Okay, these two lines are secured. Let's reattach the radiator and its supports here. Pull it forward, make sure this tab slides through and it locks in. Do the same to the other side. Once you've done that, you can insert the two screws that secure the mount onto this upper radiator support. Do the same to the other side as well. Let's get this rubber piece back in place before this bracing goes in. It'll just be easier to put it in now. Line it up at the top here and secure it with its push clip. It also had a push clip at the bottom here. Get your bracing here and slide it through this cut, and I'm going to attach it with one bolt down here. That way it stays in place. Okay, start that on. And then once it's at the top, I'm going to start in one of the bolts just to hold it for now. Let's do the same to this side. Put this shield on with the push clip up top and one on the bottom. And once the one on the bottom is on, you can slide this bracket through. I'm going to do the same thing. Start on a bolt down here, and I'm going to bring it over, start in a bolt up top. I'm going to position this as perfectly lined up as I can get it. I'm going to snug these up, and then I'm going to put the hood latch on. I'm trying to line up the witness mark from the bolt to where it was before. Let's do the same to this one over here on the passenger side. And now we can take the hood latch, line this up, start in the bolts for this. Try to line up the marks on this as well. All right, that lines up for me. Make sure it's nice and snug. And now we just have to tighten up these side bolts on each of these brackets here. There you go. Take your bumper cover, line it up with the vehicle. Make sure you don't scratch your fenders or your headlights or anything like that. Once it lines up, make sure it's also lined up on each side as well as underneath. It's kind of like a do everything at once type thing. Okay, press it into place. Looks like everything is lined up where it's supposed to be. Take your grill, if you separated yours, and line it up. Let's secure everything. We had 2 bolts that secured both of these to the upper radiator support. Once they're both lined up, snug them up. And once both bolts are in, we can put in all of our push clips going from one side to the other. Resecure it with all the 7mm screws that were holding it in place. Don't forget these push clips on the side. Do the same to both sides. There were also some screws on the side here. And don't forget about the one that ties the bumper into the fender. This one's pretty hard to see, but once you line it up, you can just tighten it right up.